Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I know it's a really busy time of year for you with all courseworks and assignments and things. So thank you for coming out on a Tuesday evening, but I know that you're going to have a really interesting session. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carolyn Keenan and I head up the Aston Enterprise and Entrepreneurship department with my colleagues Kath and Chrissy. Rosie at the back is just taking a few photos for social media. If anyone doesn't want to be in a photo, just let us know. We've got a fantastic panel here tonight. I've just got a couple of things to tell you about before we get underway. And for those of you who've been to these kind of events before, you know the drill. So we really want it to be engaging. We want you to ask as many questions as you can. I'll get us underway, but I'm sure you've got burning questions that you want to ask. There's a couple of ways you can do that. You can obviously just put your hand up and ask it. We've got the mic that I can throw to you and you can ask the questions. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, in a second, we'll have a Slido if you scan the QR code and then you can type your question in and then we can ask it at a relevant point in the evening. So your choice, but do make sure you ask your questions. So our mission with Aston Enterprise and Entrepreneurship is to help curious students like yourselves, obviously, to explore, experiment and launch new ideas. We've only really got a couple of events coming up after tonight's. Next Tuesday, we're celebrating International Women's Day here in this room. And we've got, we're getting our female founders cohort back together, so they'll be talking a little bit about how they found the program and what they learned and what they've done since. And we've also got a guest speaker, Camise Davis. She's fantastic. I've heard her speak before. She launched her business Nyla's Naturals a few years ago, but she's recently had VC funding. She's won a pitch up competition, so that will be a really good event next Tuesday. And then on the 13th of March, we're in the middle of our pitching competition. So by the end of this week, the 12 finalist videos will be up on the Student Union website. So do go on and vote for your favourites because the 6 winners from that will be going through to pitch in the final on the 13th of March. And it would be lovely to have a nice room full of people supporting them on the 13th of March. If you go onto the Linktree, Aston Enterprise Linktree, you'll find all the information on there. The other thing to mention is we've got this is where if you have an idea, you could actually register it and start working on it. We have a boot camp happening in April. We're currently recruiting for that boot camp. So I think the deadline is on there, 9th of March. So if you have an idea and you would actually like to get it off the ground, then we can support you with that, with some training and hot desking, mentoring, whole kind of package of support. That is the Slido QR code. So if you want to just phones out and scan that, you don't have to type out if you're happy to ask the question. Old school, but there's also this way as well. So tonight's event, obviously we're looking at the field of sustainability, and we've got 4 fantastic speakers, as you can see here. 3 of them I think have started their own ventures, and then Cam is experienced in the sort of charitable sector, focusing on sustainability. And I know obviously some of you in the room are interested in sort of careers and hearing about sort of working in the charitable sector. So we've got a number of different questions. And what I'll do to get us underway is ask if each of you could just sort of spend a few minutes obviously introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about your background and about the other organisation that you're involved in or the venture that you started. So Cam, would you like to start?
Yeah, Hi, so good evening, everyone. So my name's Cam. I'm currently the CEO of a charity, a sustainability environmental charity called Eco Birmingham, located currently in Northfield, but I'm actually in the middle of an office move, and we should be moving out in 2 weeks. So had a bit of a stressful few weeks. We're moving into the Midlands Arts Centre. If you're familiar with that, there's very, sort of arts culture, and very much aligns with the values of what we do. My background is originally adult education. So I taught in prison education for 12 years. I did 12 years in Winson Green, and very much focusing on rehabilitation, behaviour, and kind of supporting offenders with trying to get back on their feet again. And I guess my career spans over probably about 25 years or so now. So from adult education, which I then transferred into, actually I did a little bit of a startup. I teach yoga, so I've been teaching yoga for 10 years, and I had a yoga studio for a while, and that kind of got me into really being passionate about the environment, the planet, and just sort of being very conscious about what we as humans are doing to the planet and how we can kind of spread that message. And I guess I got into charity work after my yoga studio wasn't a success. So lots of lessons learned, and I moved into charity sector about 5 years ago now. And now I'm leading or directing a fantastic team in sustainability and supporting communities across Birmingham. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
Yeah, we're obviously going to come back and expand on it. So Becky, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm Becky and I'm the founder and director of Stripped Cosmetics, which is a sustainable bath and body cosmetics brand. We started off as completely plastic free. We still are completely plastic free, but we do a lot more now. So we do carbon offsetting with our deliveries, planting trees, those kind of things. And we're looking at supporting charities as well with the profits that we make. So a lot of exciting things going on. I've been running Stripped Cosmetics since, I want to say about 6 years now, but I've also been doing it alongside working full time. So my background is in marketing. I've done everything in marketing. I currently work at a comms agency. I work in PR and doing content, but I've done website building, all sorts of things, which has really come in handy for Stripped Cosmetics as well. So for example, I'm working on making the website more sustainable now, and kind of the impact that websites have on carbon emissions, things like that. So yeah, quite varied, but yeah, I think that's it.
And David, we're moving to you.
That's okay. So I'm David. I'm the founder of Recognition Circular. That's a community interest company. So it's a not-for-profit. So we're like a halfway house between a charity and a business, and also the founder of Resource R&D Limited, which is a company that set up only about a month ago. And in order to sort of enable me to sort of financially do these things, I'm a freelance business and IT consultant. Something I've done for a long time. That's kind of, I've been able to sort of do that a bit part-time and start these other businesses. So really from a sustainability perspective, I think for me it's all about resource utilization, trying to get more out of the resources that we've already got and trying to adopt a more of a sort of circular economy sort of process and mindset. Is it really?
Thank you.
So yeah, my name is Nishal Ramadas. I'm an electronics engineer by trade. I've been designing sensors and sensor-based systems for too long. The odd years, I guess, initially in academia, and I moved outside the industry, corporate world in around 2011. Worked there for about 10, 15 years in large companies like Honeywell, Alstom in Germany, etc. Building sensors and sensor-based systems. left the corporate world and founded HiMet. HiMet's vision is very simple. We can't rely on fossil fuels moving forward. So we need to move to something more sustainable, and there are a lot of challenges in doing that. So the goal is to build tech that enables the world to move towards cleaner future. So we are an instrumentation company. We have a couple of offices, one here in Tyseley in Birmingham, and also another one in Chennai in India. That's about me.
Thank you. So obviously we've only very lightly touched on what your businesses actually do. So maybe you'd just like to expand a little bit more on that, Cam, with your charity, what
Yep.
exactly it is that you do?
Absolutely, yeah. So Eco Birmingham, website ecobirmingham.com. So we are an organisation that is working with communities in Birmingham to kind of get them to have a look at or assess, review, kind of think about what they're doing to be kinder to the planet. Okay, so we know that, climate change is here, isn't it? Look at the weather. I mean, we don't even have to read any results or anything. We know that it's here. So our mission, our objective is really to empower individuals, and that's every individual really, just to say, yes, we get lots of I suppose sometimes we get a lot of what's the word, not negative press, but sort of talk about, well, I'm not responsible for the climate, but it's about changing people's attitudes and mindsets, about saying the things that you do on a daily basis, you can make a difference. So we do things, we use a framework called One Planet Living. It's we've got an open license with them. It's a company called Bioregional. Very much like the 17 Sustainability Developmental Goals, they've got 10 principles, and we use those 10 principles as our way moving forward with our strategy. So we look at energy, how we're using energy, and how we can support communities. We do active travel, trying to get people to think about using different forms of travel and maybe ditching and walking more, so there's a health outcome to it. We're encouraging nature relationships, gardening, getting sort of green, growing your own food. We work with community gardens, and we've got recently, we won a huge, our work is very much financed by trusts, grants, foundations. We won a 3-year project funding with the National Lottery. So we're doing a 3-year project with 2 community areas in Birmingham called Building Greener Communities, where for 3 years we're going to stay in those communities and support them in the areas that they're interested in, to help give them the tools and the skills to feel like, yeah, I can do something myself. So it's very much based on each person's priorities, because if you're not interested in, I know, you'll see at the beginning of the year, everybody does Veganuary. That might not be your thing. So whatever is your thing, we try to hone in on that, and we try to get people to, I guess, become sort of accountable for their actions. Yeah, I hope that's.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. Thank you. And Becky, so your business, tell us a little bit about your motivation for getting it started, and also just tell us a little bit more about what it is.
Yeah, of course. So Strip Cosmetics, like I say, we started out as a completely plastic-free cosmetics company. So the cosmetics industry is really known for producing a lot of small items, plastic packaging, hard plastic, coloured plastic, all types of plastic that is 9.5 times out of 10 not recyclable. Even packaging that says this is recyclable is often not recycled because it's hard to break down the components when you're at home, you can't clean them out, things like that. Loads of reasons. So the cosmetics industry brings around 120 billion units of plastic packaging every year. So when I started Strip Cosmetics, I remember being in my bathroom actually and just looking around and being surrounded by plastic bottles. And I was thinking, where's this all going to go? I'll recycle it. I'll take it to a recycling scheme. Found out it's really difficult. So I wanted to find a way to kind of still use, you know, because cosmetics are a luxury item, but I felt that it was a place that we could kind of investigate different types of packaging, using different materials, using things like waterless formulas. So you can have like a solid item rather than, so like bubble bath, for example, you can have a solid bubble bath rather than one that's full of water. That's a way you can cut down on packaging. And it's grown from there. So we're a vegan company, still plastic free, which is great. We plant trees with online orders. We support local community by going to local fairs. We are cruelty free, so not just ingredients, but also ingredient suppliers. So I work quite closely with the supply chain as well, making sure that the whole process is as sustainable as possible. And I actively work, like I say, I work quite closely with them to make sure that those processes stay the same and they're sticking to those. So we review those with them yearly. And I'm also now carbon offsetting. So with orders that go out, we carbon offset. Again, plastic free packaging. So a lot of people will go for like a glass jar, but actually there's a lot of considerations like, is the weight of the glass going to contribute to kind of the carbon emissions of transporting it? So it's considerations like that, like actually looking into packaging that is plastic free, sustainable, but not going to kind of counterbalance what you're trying to achieve by adding more carbon that way. So it's quite a journey. There's loads of things we're doing. Like I say, we want to work with charities next, and that will be the next initiative, working on doing a less carbon emissions through the website, which is a whole big project. So there's loads happening, but it's quite nice. I feel like I've said, kind of cosmetics are a luxury, but it's a little small thing to your day that you can still contribute positively to the planet. And it's like a little bit of an education piece as well to customers that want to shop more sustainably and want to think about how their consumer habits impact the planet. So that's kind of the mission with Stripped, and yeah, going along that way.
And so you said this was 2012, you said?
2018, it's been
2018, yeah. So have you seen sort of like competitors grow? It's presumably a sort of growing?
Yeah. Cosmetics is really like saturated market. And interestingly, what you tend to find is, especially in the last year, there's a lot of things like TikTok. So TikTok trends, and consumers tend to go for the more fast fashion brands. So they'll go for these items that are trending, and they're not actually looking at, like, I always think of lip gloss as an example. The components for a lip gloss, like that is just an unrecyclable product that's going to end up in landfill. So it's kind of like, how can we help these customers make better decisions on these products? How can we make, is there a way we could make a lip gloss formula that's going to be more sustainable? But then it's also tapping into the markets where the consumers are. So if they are shopping on TikTok, how do we get our products there? How do we get in front of these customers without greenwashing them? Without, we don't want to kind of encourage overconsumption of products. But yeah, it's a whole minefield actually, in terms of how consumers shop now.
I was wondering whether the more sustainable brands are growing, whether that market is growing.
Yeah, so there is a trend for more sustainable products.
But there is a danger of greenwashing.
Yeah, absolutely. Greenwashing's like a really big thing now. It's so easy to say, we're completely vegan and then not have anything to back it up. So there is a lot of greenwashing going on.
Or the bigger products do these kind of supposedly refills.
Yeah.
These little plastic in those. I mean, I suppose it's better, but
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of kind of education needed for, so like there's like deodorants, wild deodorant, that's one that's been in the news recently. That's an interesting one because the actual case is aluminium, but there's not that many ways to recycle it actually. So, and they do, again, they're kind of leaning into this fast fashion kind of way of running the business, of having like limited edition cases, collect these, and then actually you might as well buy a normal deodorant that you could probably recycle easier. So yeah, it's quite interesting how there is a growth in sustainable kind of consumer retail market, but to how sustainable they actually are when you look into it is questionable.
Yeah. And David, Can you tell us a little bit more? I think you do you do some training with young people?
Yeah, so we run sort of workshops to teach people computer and mobile phone repair. And we're working at the moment predominantly with I guess what a class does, vulnerable individuals. So that have maybe a learning disability or perhaps be homeless or vulnerably housed. And we're working with a project through Birmingham City Council who support these individuals. We're sort of helping them. But I must admit, I mean, it's fantastic that people with like a sometimes reasonably severe learning disabilities can really get into understanding how to disassemble a laptop, have to be able to troubleshoot problems, be able to put it back together, to focus on that. But also it's the stuff that we don't teach that is really fantastic. So I mean, in fact, they've had their sort of graduation awards presentation this morning for the Pure project, and it's people who've not been able to get out of the house, or people who've never been on a bus or a train before and are suddenly getting out of the house and being independent, who are sort of growing in confidence to do things. And the people that we've taught then have sort of got the confidence to, after they finish with us, you know, they're buying laptops, they're fixing families' machines, they're trying to make a bit of money and buying and selling things, and they're doing, you know, they're getting really enthusiastic and motivated about this. And I guess from a sustainability perspective, I think UK is the second largest e-waste producer per capita. So we throw away the equivalent of something like 40 laptops a second, you know, something. And then here, I mean, in Birmingham, there's a massive amount of digital poverty. So a quarter of Birmingham residents don't actually have a computer. So, but there's loads of computers. So I think, you know, our way of thinking is if people know how to fix computers, then they can take that skill home with them, and yes, they can get a job and they can get a career out of it, but also they can get the devices that they've got lying around in cupboards and that their family and their friends and everyone else has. And you know, people don't need to do without, and these things don't need to go into landfill.
Yeah, as you said earlier, it's this whole kind of circular economy. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. Yeah.
Because that was really highlighted, wasn't it, during pandemic, when lots of young people couldn't teach in their classes and things because they didn't have.
And at that same time, we had a massive supply chain crunch because the factories that made chips were closing down. They were closed for, you know, because of the pandemic, and then, you know, the chips were needed for automotive industry or for medical industry, and actually you couldn't buy new electronics in some cases. So, you know, then people then started looking at the second-hand market and actually realizing that, you know, there's actually a lot of, you know, people throwing things away that, you know, there's an awful lot of life in, and actually it's not that difficult to upgrade things and make them faster, make them better, and keep them going for a lot longer. Yeah.
Did the people that you train, and because you do sort of like repair cafes as well,
We
don't
do repair cafe as
Yeah.
well, and we do get them to help us out with that. So I think that's really good experience. When we had last time that we had one of the guys went and fixed. I mean, it's not always computers and phones. That someone brought in an electronic toy, and he was able. You know, one of the guys on our course, I just thought they were going to come and watch. And he says, "Oh, I'll have a go at that." And he, you know, I don't know what he did to it, but he got it working. And another chap fixed a phone. So, you know, I'm amazed at what, you know, because we're on a 6-week course. It's amazing what people can learn how to do in 6 weeks.
As you say, it must be so good for their confidence.
Yeah, it is amazing. But, you know, people come in, you know, just doing nothing and not leaving the house and not doing anything.
Yeah.
And then they've got a motivation to, you know, it's not for everybody, and we get people dropping out, people who aren't interested, but people who do like it and are interested, it, you know, really motivates them to do something different.
And you mentioned a new business that you're.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of related. So, I mean, we try to reuse and get value out of everything that we've got. But I think the fact of the matter is that with computers and electronics, that there is a finite lifespan. And then, well, what do we do with this stuff? And there's a lot of there's actually a lot of useful metal in this. So the company uses a technology where there's basically using bacteria to extract rare earth from things like LCD screens, televisions, computer screens, laptops, phone screens, that sort of thing. All got these rare earth elements in them. So this is a technology that worked with Coventry University to basically extract the certain elements in nearly pure form to be reused.
Amazing, yeah, because obviously they are so rare, and then they're presumed there's a finite, and they're obviously some of them very hard to get to, aren't they?
They're not necessarily rare, but some of them there is, say, some geopolitical risk around. So most of them are found in China, and then even those that aren't, nearly all of the rare earth sort of refining in the world is done in China. And if everyone wants to fall out with China, that could be a problem.
Yeah. Or you hear about Trump and Ukraine and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And Nish, so maybe you could tell us, obviously in layman's terms, what it is that HiMet looking to do.
Yeah, sure. So we all know that battery is going to play a massive role in the current EVs are getting adopted. Even energy storage solutions, to balance renewable energy for grid usage, etc. Batteries are going to play a critical role. But not many people know this. If you start a gigafactory anywhere in the world today, it'll take at least 1 year to reach an yield of 50%, at least. More like 90% of batteries you make in the first year are thrown away. And that number, wastage number, drops down to about 30% when you reach 5 years timeline. And it comes down to about 10%, 8 to 10% in 10 years. And that's huge, given all the energy going in to make these batteries, the rare earth materials going inside them. It's just not sustainable. So we really need to make batteries in a more sustainable fashion. So we kind of looked into the problem and came to know this, and we couldn't believe it. Actually, this is happening. And we found out that there's not enough quality control in line in gigafactories when they make them. Usually what you do is you make a battery in gigafactories, and then at the end you try and test them electrically. If they're not 100%, we all know what happens to batteries, right? They explode and create fire hazard. So you can't use them. So you just have to recycle them straight away. And that's part of the problem. So we came up with this idea, just like looking at a baby inside a pregnant lady's tummy. We use an ultrasound equipment. We designed a very easy ultrasound equipment that can look inside battery when you manufacture them in real time. So the idea is you're able to get sort of manufacturing intelligence when you make them, and hopefully that manufacturing intelligence will make the companies to identify defects early, reduce wastage, and really kind of build better and safe quality batteries.
And so the sort of technology that you're using, is that something that you've developed yourself?
That's right. Yeah. So it sounds very, very, very depressing. I've always been an ultrasound person ever since I took this topic in my PhD. Absolutely fascinating field, very niche area. Not many people know this. If you start your day in the morning, back to bed at night, you would have encountered at least one or two products that's got some ultrasound in it. For example, your fingerprint scanners in a mobile phone, they're ultrasound. Your reverse parking sensors, ultrasound. And even though it's so widely used, medical and defense use, everybody knows, but nobody teaches them in such a niche area. So I really got hooked into it. And in my PhD, even though the work was largely into defense, mine hunting sonar and probes like that was my topic of interest then I decided I'm going to just become an expert in that area. So the next 20 years, I've always built ultrasonic systems for different application. So fast forward 10 years or so, I've got this unique expertise where I can build ultrasonic systems for medical, industrial, non-destructive testing, flow measurement, etc. And then that is a very niche skill set. So that kind of made me think about most of the problems into when I do something with ultrasound. So when a battery company approached us, I didn't know anything about battery at that point. And I thought, can you test it with ultrasound? Can you look inside that? Right. And that's how it started.
Maybe we can look a little bit now, I think, about funding. Cam, you've mentioned that the various funding streams that you get. Do you sort of have somebody in-house who writes the bids?
Yes, we do. So in our team, we're a small team. We're so if you think about it, there are 6 of us in the team. We then have 10 board members who are volunteers. We have 17 freelancers because our work is very much based on if we can get funding, we can deliver. So hence why we're small, as in, full-time employed. We all work very sort of hybrid, fairly flexible. And so we have to get our funding from many sources to be able to deliver what we want to do. And, nationally and even internationally, the agenda of green and getting people to be a bit more savvy with how they are, be a bit more sort of eco-conscious, if you want to call it, or carbon literate. There's lots of funding pots, but everybody's going for those funding pots. So, and being a small sector anyway, we've got a fantastic fundraising coordinator and a director of fundraising who raise. So, for example, we've already raised 66% of the funds we need for next year's activities already now. So we kind of feel quite secure in knowing that we can deliver. So we always have, like I'm actually working on now our next 3-year strategy. So that work's starting for 26 to 29. But so sort of planning for that. So we will contact trusts, foundations, service grants sometimes, Birmingham City Council, although obviously we all know Birmingham City Council, have sort of sold off a lot of their assets. And then donations, corporates. I'm quite keen and fairly responsible for going out and speaking to corporates and supporting them with their CSR goals. So we might do a sort of corporate day where they will come in, a team of volunteers, have a session with us on sustainability, and then go out and do some community gardening, building relationships, and then they may donate to our charity for the year. Sometimes we get anonymous donors. So a lot of our work is very much on using platforms to kind of say, hey, this is what we do. We're really passionate about what we do, but we can only do it, if we can get funding for it. And so we have to justify, obviously, where we're going to spend the money, how we're going to spend it, what's the impact. So the impact is the most important. So if it's going to make an impact, a trust, a foundation is going to be really interested on that impact. So the National Lottery are very supportive of this 3-year project that we're doing, which means that we can spend time in a community area. So we're working in Allens Cross in Northfield. It's a community association. They've got a community centre there with a food bank. So we're doing quite a lot of work with that community. We've actually created a sustainable plan for the organisation. We're supporting them with kind of getting almost like a green impact statement. So really helping them to get on their feet. And we're actually working with Birmingham City Council to actually create a sustainability profile. So that's something that is not on the City Council website. So they're really keen on that. So the fact that we've got 3 years in a community also gives communities, I guess, the confidence that somebody's here to stay to help. Because sometimes, there's been many a time in many communities where we've worked, we've got a pot of funding, we've got a whole load of community beneficiaries so excited, and we've delivered some really good sort of impactful stuff which has helped them change. But then when the money runs out, we also have to go in a way. And so it's about also trying to be sustainable in keeping the flow of funding.
Trying to embed it.
Embed it, yeah. So, you know, and also give people that hope, because a lot of funding pots generally for impact will also look at sort of where the wards where you work. So it might be an area of social deprivation, because it's much needed there. And, you know, but it's also then trying to get the buy-in of people in that community to want to have help, or to find that it's important for them. So yeah, building relationships with funders is sort of like, I guess, the bread and butter of what we do. And we produce an impact report every year.
I saw that.
Yeah,
Published on your website.
that's right.
isn't it?
Yeah. So our impact report, you know, really kind of gives you sort of what we've done in a year, and we use that obviously every year to showcase, I guess, the work that we do and the impact that it makes.
And so if with the 3 years of the project you just mentioned, could that, if that's been successful, has the impact that you hope, can that be replicated in other?
Absolutely. So that's the idea. Yeah. So sorry, yeah, there's Allen's Cross and then there's Sparkhill, the Springfield project. So we're in those two communities, and I'm in talks now with other communities where we've built some relationships to help support them. We've even got, you know, researchers who are going to do an impact report for that particular project. Hopefully that's something we will share, and it will go up on Birmingham City website as well at some point, if we get this board profile. And then the other ways is through donations and fundraising. We had actually, we get people just saying that they love the work that we do and that they've done. We had Marta and I think it was Maria, and they did like 100-kilometre walk in Scotland, somewhere across Scotland, to raise money for our charity. And it was so wonderful. So yeah, you know, they sort of like put it out on their socials, they tagged us, and then we get sort of funding through that. And Becky talked about, you know, supporting charities. There's something new that we've signed up to. I mean, afterwards, it's called 1% for the Planet. I don't know if you've heard of 1% for the Planet. Yeah, so we, you know, so organisations can sign up for 1% of the planet, and it means that they can, if they register on that, they, you know, 1% of their profits can go to a charity of their choice. And so, yeah, you know, it's work going on in the background. We've got the Big Give campaign coming up in April, where, you know, we will get match funded. So we're trying to raise £7,000, and then we'll get match funded. I think I might have to be on a static bike for about 100 miles to get the money's worth that day. That's my job that during that week. But yeah, definitely. So, you know, there's lots of ways to fundraise. It's always fun, and it's always experimental as well.
Quite creative.
You have to be quite creative, and you also have to be prepared to sometimes, you know, not be successful, but you then learn and think, okay, what could I have done next time, or what should I do next? But yeah, that's kind of where we are with fundraising.
Thank you. Yeah. And Becky, how about you with your business? Have you sort of self-funded it all, or have you ever taken on any external funding?
Yes. So as a cosmetics retailer, a lot of the funding comes from sales, naturally. So it's really important to kind of keep customers interested. So that's mainly through marketing. But on the flip side of that, it's really important to make sure you're not greenwashing customers, because you want customers to stay loyal, you want them to enjoy the product, you want them to keep buying. So there's that element. In terms of external funding, I have done a NatWest backed crowdfunder before. So that was really great. Terrible timing, because as it kicked off, COVID happened. Everything went into lockdown, which is a little bit nerve-wracking, because I'd set quite a high target for where the business was at the time. And if you do a crowdfunder with a bank or with backing, if you meet your target, they'll bump up your funds and contribute and give you some more money towards it. So meeting that target was scary, but it was actually really nice kind of lesson in community building and having that really close relationship and finding out what customers actually wanted in this space, to encourage them to kind of fund you with, you know, if you were going to give them a gift or if you were going to give them a discount, or would they just want, you know, did they just like what you were doing and they wanted to back you and give you some money? And the great news was that that crowdfunder was successful and we did get the business backing, and then we got the additional backing from NatWest.
And was the money for something in particular?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing project actually. It's turned into a huge project that will end up being kind of a sister business to Strip Cosmetics. And that is for kind of the basis of the funding was for a lipstick. Lipstick, like I mentioned, the lip gloss packaging, lipstick packaging is just unrecyclable. Loads goes into landfill. So making a product, a lipstick product, how the money was basically going into research for that, research for formulations. How can we make that product not rely on the plastic packaging? How can we make it more innovative in that sense? So this is an ongoing project into like a colour cosmetics, a sustainable colour cosmetics branch of Strip Cosmetics. So it's really exciting. Like I say, it's taking a long time because it's having to completely pick apart formulas and make sure that the end product is affordable as well to customers. But it's really exciting, really fun, and we're getting really close to end products. So yeah, excited.
With the products, you do all the formulas yourself. You don't use somebody else to do that for you.
No. So how cosmetics works? Any cosmetic item has to be assessed by a cosmetic chemist, and that's so you do have to work with like a cosmetics lab. Everything we make is made in house. It's all manufactured by me, all handmade. So I work closely with a couple of cosmetic chemists to get those approved and get the paperwork. So you do have that relationship kind of with, and if you work with them kind of as it scales up, you'd probably move into like a warehouse and you'd have in-house chemists. But yes, that relationship is quite important for that.
And David, how about the sort of business model, the funding for your ventures?
Yeah, so I think the good thing about a not-for-profit is you can start with nothing. You've got an idea that they like the National Lottery will give you £20,000 to get going, which is great. And that's what kind of kicked things off for us and allowed us to sort of start our operations. £20,000 is never a sustainable enough amount of funding to any kind of operation though. So it is always challenging. So we have a commercial side of the operation. So we refurbish laptops and we lease those out as a kind of service. So we do really basic tiers, so £5 a month, £14 a month, 19. And that as that grows, hopefully that's going to help to boost our funding. So we're keen to speak to businesses and universities or whoever to donate the kit that they don't want, so that we find some value out of it.
Are you speaking to Aston?
I don't know who we know at Aston, but yes, I mean, thank you for the introduction. Yes, and the thing that's been really fantastic for us is the contract we've got with the Pure project through Birmingham City Council. So they're actually paying us to run the workshop. So it's a bit of core funding that actually almost pays for the operation. I still mostly work for free. In this venture, so I think if you've got illusions of getting rich quickly, it could happen, but more often it's a lot of work for not a lot of money, but it is a labour of love. So we'll get there. And I guess the funding to start the other business came from from an accelerator grant that actually I'd gone into with another business, and I sort of midway through the kind of accelerator program, I thought probably the business wasn't really worth investing in, and I was going to find something else to do with the grants, and I'd used it to fund a small research project with Coventry University on this sort of rare earth recovery project, and that's what got that started.
Okay. But that, when that gets going, that will be a sort of, the revenue will be coming from what you're extracting and
So
so.
now the revenue would be a combination of sort of royalty, licensing revenue, and sort of developing engineering services. So basically getting a bioreactor facility set up for people to be able to do this at industrial scale.
Okay. So that one can really scale.
I hope so.
Yeah. Then you can retire.
A dream.
And Nish, how about what's the kind of business model for developing climate?
So when I started my company, I was quite late in my career anyway. So I was fortunate enough to think, should I raise money or should I use my own money? Somehow, I don't know, it's whether because, you grew up in Asia, you're always very careful with money. So I was thinking, before we start building a product, how do we raise money? People were telling, you've got credibility, you've got director level positions in branded companies, etc. You're going to develop this product, you'll be able to raise money. But I thought that was high risk. So right or wrong, I decided not to raise money until we find a product that we truly believe is going to make a massive impact. Not only me, the team working with me need to, 200% believe it. And then from a technology readiness level, we should have validated at least that somewhere, right? So then the choice was, how do we get from TRL1 to 4 in a frugal manner? So I just put my money into the company and decided, okay, I'm not going to take a salary. Let's do market research. Now, what do we develop? Where are the pain points? That's very important because one of the biggest reasons why products don't take off is you build something either nobody wants or ahead of the market. Timing is not right, etc. So the first 3 months, even though there was an urge to develop something, I had to invest a lot of time to do market research and see, okay, where are the pain points? Which are the ones where you really need solution, right? And if we had to generate revenue and all that commercial activities, that'll be a distraction. Because I was fortunate enough to have a bit of a bank balance, I was able to do that. And once we find a product, then it's developing anything hardware that requires testing and approval and everything is very expensive, particularly in UK. And you need very deep pockets, right? So that's where the problem comes. And then, luckily we had fantastic support from organizations like Innovate UK, Faraday Battery, Challenge, etc. So last year, for example, when we came up with this idea for an innovative ultrasonic scanner for battery, we applied funding and we got $250,000 grant to develop that idea from idea to a prototype. So we have to match fund these. So we use our funding to sort of match fund with 30%, and you amplify the amount that you can bring, because team is important. Then we start to recruit people and get people in, etc. We are now in the technology readiness level 4 or 5, and we have a product which is timely and potentially make a huge impact globally. And now we do need to raise money. So that's when we are now looking to continue developing products using R&D and partnerships, etc. But once you have a product and taking it to market, certifying it, etc., you need millions. And then even if you have to set up a very small production unit, pairing unit, that's again going to cost several million to do, at least in UK. So we're now thinking about investment and raise and really kind of going from field to setting up a small scale production unit and growing. But we decided also not to do consultancy or anything, because I did try that. Whenever our bank balance go down, we will be a little bit thinking, oh no, what do we do, right? And then once I thought, let's do consultancy. So 2023 January, I said, look, any consultancy projects, we'll shut down what we are doing. We'll do that consultancy project for a month or so, generate a small revenue, 50, 60, 70K, and then go back into once the reserves back up and say, okay, that'll keep the lights on for a year. Then let's go back into product development. But that takes so much oxygen and momentum away from the product we develop, we decided we're not going to do that again, even though it's very tempting to go into that option to make money. That's just not scalable. And if I'd probably started my business when I was in my early 30s or something like that, I would have definitely done that, because if you generate a lot of revenue and then R&D becomes easy as well. But when you're approaching 50, you need to think you've got one shot at building something that can make a massive impact, maybe two if you're lucky. But yeah, so that's the decision behind our funding scene. So we are pre-revenue, or minimally revenue. We do some paid trials of this product for a very well-known Japanese car company at the moment. They're paying to test it, which is always a good thing. But we did our noodle and a
The next phase is going to be the raising.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive grant. We need a minimum of 5 million to do what we want to do. Just to sort of give the scale, right? If you have a gigafactory, we have two actually who's willing to put our instruments in later this year or early next year. Just the instruments that need to go inside alone will cost $500,000. And then, designing them, engineering them, certifying them, CE, now UK is out of European Union, UKCA and all that certification and all that things will take a lot of effort and making a product. In technology terms, we call it the valley of death, right? Great ideas are fantastic, but getting it across the valley of death and to market, it's a completely different ball game, which unfortunately UK doesn't do very well compared to even our neighbors across the ocean, America, and even upcoming emerging markets like India and others do much better in that space. So yeah, so we're on that tricky phase now.
You mentioned when we spoke, you've been in India recently.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So we were lucky that we were one of the few companies that chose them to travel to India to promote this product, because we design and build this product. Unfortunately, we don't have the scale in the UK, right? You're lucky, maybe Tata will build Agriculture will build actually in Somerset in a couple of years' time, and we've got 1 gigafactory, right? The scale doesn't exist. So for scale, we need to go either to Europe, America, or Asia. So we decided our beachhead market is India and Europe. Because I come from India, I thought I should make the best of both worlds. And in India is also like UK at the moment, very, very young in battery space, but it'll exponentially grow in the next few years. So it's a strategic market for us. We go regularly. This year we are fortunate. We had a big group of companies traveling with support from UK governments. We had government supporting us in India. We attended. There was a UK pavilion where a lot of innovative companies developing tech presented our solutions, and also local Department of Business and Trade there connected with all relevant sort of synergetic partners in India. So a lot of B2B businesses, etc. Fantastic, actually.
So I've got a couple more questions, but then we've also got a lot on the screen that have been going up. So mine are going to be a little bit around sort of reflecting, I guess. So maybe to each of you, firstly, could I ask you what your biggest success you would say has been, right? And then maybe talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced as well. So Cam, you can go first.
It's very difficult to pinpoint a big success. I think we're always very grateful as a charity to be able to continue to do the work that we do. And I think, working as a team is really, really important. Having a good team behind you is what brings success. And I think that's really important. And our team, come from a background of skills, and actually one of the successes that was a product that was produced. So for our active travel team, and that's my colleague Lisa, she's like, she is like an avid cyclist, like she cycles in mud and up mountains and all sorts like that. Yeah, she's fantastic. She created actually with an artist, it's called the 69 wards map. So Birmingham has got 69 wards. So people were asking about, you know, what kind of, you know, where can I cycle? What routes can I take? I'm a keen cyclist, or I've got family and I want to take my kids out. And, you know, so we're very keen on showing people to be a tourist in your own city, because there are so many beautiful places, you know, that sometimes we don't explore. So she created something called the 69 wards map. It's on Komoot. You can put it into Google, it'll come up. I've even got some hard copies today. You can take one away with you, and it's basically got 13 cycling routes on there that you can take. And it kind of spans across the city. And that product's been, for us, you know, it's a map that's downloadable. It's downloaded every day, you know, and cycling groups take it. It's available nationally if, you know, somebody's coming into Birmingham. We've just done at BCU in their Go Green Week, we used the map and took their students out. So I'd say that's been a really successful sort of product that's been produced, but a lot of hard work went into that to produce it. And that's because also we've got a very passionate team. You know, when you've got a purpose and you enjoy what you do, you put your whole heart into it, and you get an end product. So I'd say that certainly has been a really great success for us as a charity. We take it with us everywhere. So I've got a free gift for you all today. Take them out. I'll leave them out or give them out at the end.
Fantastic.
And I guess challenges are also about keeping to timelines, you know. So we always have, you know, my background, although I said adult education, I graduated in business and management. So, you know, we always have a project. We make project proposals every year, what we propose to do, how we propose to do it. We set timelines, and sometimes challenges are timelines for us, can be, because we are a very small team. So our capacity isn't always, you know, we're not there 5 days a week. Some of us work 30 hours, some of us work 22 hours. So it's just kind of taking that into consideration. But, you know, we get the job done eventually through hard work, and that sense of job satisfaction after you do it is really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so successes, things that have been really good.
Things that you're most proud of.
Yeah. For me, it's probably the small wins though. So it's really lovely when you go to a pop-up and you have a return customer and you build a relationship with them and they really love the products. And even if it's a customer who buys a product from you instead of another brand, that's quite nice, because you know they're going to take that product away. Maybe, like, you know, they might not buy from you again, but they've got that, they're kind of learning about sustainability, and they're learning how their shopping habits contribute to sustainability. So that's always a win for me. The crowdfunder was a really big win. Again, not just obviously the funding was great, but in terms of community building and finding out what is important to our customers and what they actually want from products, that was really great. I'm really proud of that.
Foundation of the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do.
Yeah, it can be quite hard, especially in the cosmetic space, to get people on the sustainability side. Like I said earlier, trending products and people want the latest thing, they want whatever's trending online. So getting them to kind of shift their mindset to a more sustainable product is a challenge, but it's worth it in the end. And I think in the long run, it kind of helps people think about their small contributions and how that impacts the planet. So that's always a success.
Any challenges?
Challenges. Oh gosh, lots of challenges. For me personally, time is a challenge, because I do work as well alongside running the business. So
a question up there.
Oh, great, yeah. Yeah, so essentially having 2 full-time jobs, that's a challenge, but it's always great fun to kind of see the end results, like I say. going to pop-ups and things like that, speaking to customers. That's always great. Another challenge that's probably more unique to me is product formulating. So you can have the greatest idea in the world, you mix ingredients together and it just looks terrible, smells terrible, doesn't work. I've had bath bombs that I've left overnight come back and they've exploded in the lab because there's been too much humidity. It turned out there's too much humidity in the air. So little things like that you don't anticipate, but then they catch you out. That's always a challenge. But again, if you've got kind of an innovative brain, there's always ways to work around it.
Think of the entrepreneur, that's that problem solving ability. And that
Yeah,
resilience
definitely.
is key, isn't it?
Definitely, I'd agree.
Yeah. David, how about you?
Yeah, I think starting up a business can be a bit of a roller coaster at times, and there's certainly highs and lows. We're working on our kind of impact measurement and impact statements, and that's something I'm hoping we can have a report on when this year finishes. But I think for me, the successes are probably more about the stories than the numbers and the people, and when you can see that a difference is made for someone, it's really, I suppose that's the success, and that's why I love doing what we do. And then there's challenges. Is money is always a challenge. Time is a challenge, and I think trying to engage businesses and get some partnership as well as a challenge. So people say they like what we do, and I think we've got something to offer to businesses that want to work with us. But there seem to be so many hurdles to get over to sort of establish any kind of meaningful partnership where we can actually help each other is quite difficult, actually.
Yeah, things don't move very quickly, do they?
The decision-making cycle is very slow.
Yeah.
And I suppose if people always want you to do something for nothing, and we do a lot of things for nothing because we've got a social purpose, but in a way I think we've been our own worst enemy because we've gone and we've done things for nothing and we've volunteered our time, and then people just expect it and we can't sustain that. And although I'm willing to do things for free, I can't do that. So and I think we do offer value, and I think it's only fair that we get paid for it.
I think that's right, isn't it? It's probably the same way in evolution as well. If you are delivering value, you've got to get people to recognise that. And how about you, Nish?
I guess so the biggest win I would say is the learning part. I don't come from a sort of business family. Family comes from that's one going against the grain there, and you learn all about entrepreneurship but doing it is completely different, right? So the learning parts, mistakes, and just take it to the chin and move forward, right? So I think that's the biggest win for 4 years I've been battling this, and challenges. What are the 3 most common reason a business fails or a startup fails, right? You run out of cash, you run out of gas, right? Lose energy or motivation, whatever, or you develop a product nobody wants or the wrong time, etc. Guess what? We've done all 3 in 4 years, right? So when I started 2015, I picked hydrogen economy as a topic for my MBA dissertation at Warwick, and the more I studied, I was in oil and gas. I was like, I'm part of the problem. Hydrogen is the future, right? Every report you read is telling, oh, hydrogen is going to do this, hydrogen is going to do that, right? What can go wrong, right? So did market research, came up with ideas for product, etc. And then 2 years we've been developing things, and the market's not picking up at all, right? So you can do as much research as you can, but market can come and punch you in the face. And the last thing you want is build a fantastic energy meter or something for UK residential application that nobody wants because hydrogen is not going to be here until 2026 or whatever, right? So we developed the wrong product or earlier than market wanted. So we did that mistake. And then I always work like a maniac, most people do what they do. And I thought I'll never run out of gas, right? I was struggling last year. Like, just because, you started 2 years, work 24/7, live and breathe hydrogen meters and everything. And then suddenly realized that's not going to take off. And then we pivoted to battery and industry, automotive industry I didn't know anything about. So we have to reinvent ourselves. So going and doing market research again and see how the battery industry is, if you develop a product, how do you position it? Where do you attack first? Is it the manufacturing? Is it the recycling end? Is it, somewhere else in between, right? All that thing sucks the life out of you. And last year I thought, you know what, it's a marathon. I need a break. And I just had to take a break because you do run out of energy. And if you're starting, I always tell everyone, I wish I had started this earlier in my life. I didn't have the confidence when I was in my 30s or early 40s. And then cash flow is so tricky to manage. Even if you get $250,000 funding, paying out for things and then doing the annoying claim process in Innovate UK where you have to submit this, submit that, and you're looking at bank balance and thinking, oh, I need that in like next week, to pay for something else, right? Oh, it's a challenge, absolute challenge. So all those things will give you sleepless nights and yeah, but somehow if you deeply believe in the product, you know that it's going to make a big difference. You have to develop the grit or resilience to keep going, really.
I don't know whether you mentioned this, but have you got what sort of size is your team? What people around?
So very small team, so heavy on R&D. So we have one full-time scientist based here, 3 people in India, and then we were lucky that we work with a lot of academic partners. Many of them who we worked with, University of Birmingham, College Union, fairly locally, some in Strathclyde and Glasgow, etc. Do really liked what we were doing. The people often get really kind of passionate about us, and then many of them said, "Oh, can we join our team?" So we've now got a lot of people coming in from academia, seconded on prestigious fellowships like Royal Society Fellowship and Carnegie Fellowships, etc. So they're now part of our family, but we don't have to pay for them. So this is fantastic. And when really and for an academic from UOB, who's working in arts, they get the real world experience of developing a product rather than being purely academically. So the team is around 1,000 people now, very R&D focused. Hopefully, our aim is to double next year, at least.
Get the funding, I guess.
And that's important. We need to unlock the money to go, and that to add an engineering division and a little bit of marketing. We don't do much marketing at the moment because maybe the business development side and stuff we need to start to think about now that we're sort of releasing a product.
Yeah. So does anybody want to ask any questions in the room, or we can go on to the
So I was wondering.
I'm gonna give you the box.
Ready?
Yeah. So a question for all of you. I was wondering, what are some things you wish you knew earlier before starting your venture, or some tips you'd give yourself before starting this venture, and also regrets that you have on the project?
Really good question. And
You're gonna go first.
yeah. I think just things like Nish is saying, you started things later. I think when you're younger, you're a bit more fearless, so trust that. Like just do it. Like if there's something that I would say, I think as you get older, you procrastinate too much and you think about all of the different things. So I think my younger self would probably have trusted my gut instinct with things that I wanted to do. And I didn't, and I did them probably later. I don't know if that kind of is a good example of an answer for you, but yeah, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And I think when you're younger is just to, just embrace what you feel like you think you can do, but make sure you research all your avenues. And yeah, I can't remember what the other part of your question was. Regrets.
Yeah.
No regrets. No regrets.
Good. Got you, Becky?
So yeah, great question. I think for me, when I first started, I thought that it was probably like everyone, a little bit naive, thought it would be really easy to do all these things. I was making all these products and submitting all these formulations, and actually I was probably doing too much in the wrong space. So that was kind of a big learning curve for me. Not really regret, but very much having a little bit of naivety when you come in. And I think it's important to know when to refocus yourself and take a step back and be like, do I need 30 different fragrances of this product? Probably not. So having that kind of awareness is really good. So yeah, not really a regret, but that kind of thought. I think that's, if I could go back in time, I'd tell myself, slow down on the product side and think about what people actually want. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've also fallen into the trap of sort of running out of cash, running out of gas, and sort of having the wrong product at the wrong time. And I think maybe the slight regret is maybe realizing that a little bit later than I should have and hanging on. Because I mean, starting up a business is a risk. Businesses fail, and let it fail if it's not the right thing, and move on and do something else. And I don't really regret leaving it late in life to start doing this, because I think when I was younger, I had the energy maybe, but I didn't have the experience and I didn't have the confidence. And I think I can kind of take things, I don't, things don't faze me as much now that I'm older. I don't worry about stuff. And also I've kind of financially, things are, I wouldn't have been able to do this financially if I was younger and be able to support myself. So I think, yeah, it would have been great to be able to do it in my 20s, but particularly I wonder, would I be able to? I think I might have struggled.
Not really. I mean, like I said, the only small regret is I wish I had started early. I really like what I do now. Not probably the money, but the rest all is fun, because you truly believe in the product, you're putting your heart and soul into making that come to life. The mistake that I wish I had not made when I started my business was I started alone. A few of my friends helped me in the beginning, saying that you're going to be lonely game the first couple of years, we'll help you. But you're trying to do everything yourself. I should have realized it earlier and should have built a team around me quicker. That was a mistake that I wouldn't do moving forward. So that's something probably I'll blame myself if I'm doing from a team. At the end, it's the team that makes the product take out the product.
Be careful who you choose in your team. I've had regrets about that as well.
Pros and cons and everything.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for your answers.
Get the box, please. Yes, thank you. Yeah, has he throw it or what? You got to throw it.
Well, ask your question first and then you
So hi Becky. My basic question is that a lot of us have problem in getting to sustainability because we don't have technical backgrounds. You have a background in marketing, and you did tell us that you are working with cosmetic chemists and stuff. But how were you able to afford them, or how could they tell you that this chemical works with this? Were you able to make sense of it? Because I think not having a technical background really challenges you. So yeah.
Yeah, so interestingly, my day job in marketing, I work in B2B. So I do work with a lot of technical companies. Funnily enough, the last two pieces I worked on, one was in battery tech and one was in microchip tech, funnily enough. So completely different to what I do on the cosmetic side. But it has been a big learning curve, kind of like what I said earlier when I kind of jumped in thinking I could do everything, make everything be really easy. It's not. So learning about, I don't have any sciencey background, learning about kind of how formulation works and actually really taking a step back and going right back to basics and leaning on the support and asking questions. So the cosmetic chemists I work with, I've got a great relationship with, but at the start, knowing what questions to ask, knowing what they would want. So kind of doing the research beforehand and not being afraid to ask them, like, what's going to make it easier? How can we get this product over the line? How can we get it assessed? How can we do that? So I think it's just really important to throw yourself into the learning and not be afraid to take a step back and ask the questions. And if you're not sure, don't be afraid to kind of shout up about that. And then I kind of mentioned the B2B marketing side, because there's bits to that you can kind of bring over. So I know how, you know, scaling up manufacturing works. So I can kind of think ahead, like, oh, when the business gets to that stage, how can I bring some of that knowledge into the wider business, and how can I make that sustainable? Like, what technology bits do I know that I can kind of bring into that? So yeah, I think it's just really important to always be really keen to learn and throw yourself in on that side, and not be afraid to look a little bit stupid sometimes. Just be happy and open to ask questions to the people that know a bit more.
Just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
did you hire them, the chemists, like in the very start, and were you able to afford them? Because like if I'm assuming they have such good technical background, they must be charging a lot. So did they have their own company, and you outsourced it, or how did you figure that out?
Yeah, so generally how the ones I work with anyway, they tend to be more of a freelance. There's one guy who's got his own business, but all he does is assess cosmetic information and put the reports together, basically. Tends to be, if you've got a bigger company, you're going to have those people working for you, so you can go down the route of being a cosmetic chemist, but you need a chemistry degree for that, and I'm just not technically minded enough to do that. So I'll always have to either hire someone in-house or work with these companies. But they do tend to be, the smaller scale companies, it tends to be like an independent party who's got a degree, got a master, you know, they've really worked up, they've got their qualifications, and they can work with you to submit the paperwork correctly. You can't sell cosmetic products without it. So they are really kind of knowledgeable, and they will help you. So yeah, it tends to, I'd describe it as a freelance basis. They're all relatively self-employed, that kind of side. Yeah, but there's a big network of them, so easy to find.
Thanks so much.
Let's go to some on the Slido, shall we? So there's the first one there is someone's asking whether, in your view, business is easier to win when your product demonstrates sort of public welfare or demonstrates sort of social impact, say. What do you, in your experience, that?
It's easier to start a conversation with people. It's easier to win trust from people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not yet sure it's easier for people to actually open the wallets, but it's
As we sort of
definitely,
mentioned before, yeah.
but it's definitely easier to get your foot in the door and start those conversations, to be trusted and to sort of get in there. Actually getting people to spend the money is another story, but I suppose you got to be in there in the first place. So it's the first step, I think.
Yeah, and Nish, I guess with yours, you're getting support from the government to a certain level, but then it's that sort of commercialization piece which is going to be
Tough route, yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, definitely. The funding, UK in general is very advanced innovation side of things, right? So there are a lot of funding mechanism to start an idea, etc. But then to take it to market, it's a completely different ballgame.
Yeah.
And that you can't rely on grant income and things like that. So
Yeah.
So how do you get there, and also starting to generate revenue and go to market strategy, and how do you start to move from R&D to commercial is a tricky one.
We'll have to get you back, won't we, to find out how the next stage of the journey goes. Thank you. Nish, there's one there about the difference between business culture in India and the UK. What do you see as the differences? I mean, you always mentioned actually India may be better in that sort of commercialization.
Yeah, I think very different the way you do business in different Asia in general and compared to Europe. Just for example, here, if you have a product and it works well, you can expect to go and demonstrate and set up a JV in Asia, generally, you have to build that relationship, the trust, and you need to work with them. It's a long game there. But I was lucky that I was born in India. First, 20 odd years I spent there, and the next 30 years I've lived in UK. So I can see the best of both worlds, and it makes no sense not to use that. That complementary kind of strength each culture has. So even though there are differences, there are some hurdles here. There are some hurdles in because you experience both firsthand, learn how to navigate. The example I tell is, if I give a task to one of our employees in India, you just jump without thinking. That's how people are trained there. Here, if you give the same task to someone, you're like, oh, do you have any past example? And who do I talk to find out? It was like, no, you need to get that done tomorrow. But I don't know that, and then it's how to find that balance, right? And then you learn, right? And okay, if you want to do something quickly, you give to that person. If you need to do something thoroughly, you give to this person, because it's very process oriented. The West is, right? You never do something without, or if you do something, which is also quite good, they codify that, right? So next time it's easier to do. In India, for example, you do it, and then like, how did you do it? Like, I have no idea. And then you have to spend even more time to figure out, right? So it's you learn to navigate them. And the good thing is, there are positive things which you can leverage from different cultures, and there's also negative things you need to navigate somehow, and you get to do that. So I think it's a win-win rather than a setback.
Thank you. Becky, actually, I was interested in this when you touched on it earlier as well. Someone, as you can see, has asked, how does a website create solutions? How is it possible to make the website more eco-friendly?
Yeah, this is a great question. And again, it's something actually that I worked on really recently in my day job, so well equipped. So the internet actually contributes a significant amount to carbon emissions, and the biggest reason for that is through data center use and the amount of kind of energy and data that's pulled through, like loading pages, things like that. So as a kind of whistle-stop tour of how to make a website more sustainable, make sure you're kind of working with servers, suppliers, your web host, make sure they're green. So they're either using renewable energy or they're offsetting all the carbon. I can't remember what it was, but I did see a data center that was using the heat from the facility to heat water, and that was going back into the community. So there are sustainable green energy that you can host your website on. And then smaller changes, things like optimizing your images, making sure, they still look great, but they're small and they load really quickly. Little things like if you've got videos on your website, take them off autoplay, because one, it's really annoying when you go on a website and music starts blaring and you don't know where it's coming from. But it's also much better to have the option to load the video and play it, give the website visitor that option, and that's going to reduce the kind of data pull into the page. So that's another good thing. And probably, there's loads of like little tweaks you can make, but another really good thing to look at is the actual code behind the website. So what tends to happen when people build websites, as they get bigger and bigger, they might use plugins, they'll use kind of third-party code, Google Ads, things like that. That will all sit in the back end of the website. And often you might use that for a year and then move on to something else. You might bring it in-house, various different things. And that code is still sitting in the back end of your website unused. And that loads your page basically. And that makes it harder. Well, but it uses more energy to load the website and run the website. So it's always good to kind of audit what third-party code you've got. Is there any actual website code that you could just get rid of? So yeah, it's good to kind of work with web developers and keep an eye on that, and that will help reduce your carbon emissions and your data pull.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a pet subject of mine. So I think it's true data centers use a massive amount of energy because they're huge facilities. But if you were to look at the average sort of European data center and looked at their carbon footprint, the energy usage is around 10% of the carbon footprint, and the rest is emissions embodied in things like construction, embodied emissions in equipment, in cooling, in other things. So energy is actually a really small part of the problem. And then you have these sort of hosting companies who say they're green, but they actually use something called PPA. So it's a power purchase agreement. So they're plugging their servers into the same grid as the rest of us, that's powered by the same energy that comes from whatever happens to be powering the grid at the time. And they're just using offsets, which is effectively greenwashing. So you sort of need to actually know the physical location of the data center. So there are sort of energy maps that you can see what the carbon intensity of the grid is in certain locations. So if you look in Scotland, their energy usage is nearly all green, or parts of Scandinavia. So I think you need to look behind the claims, and definitely the way you architect the website is really important, and not playing your videos and reducing some of the bloat in the site is important. But energy usage is of relatively small importance when it comes to sustainability.
And obviously this greenwashing is an issue in lots of different areas, isn't it?
Yeah, a huge issue.
Thank you. There's a question now about AI and whether you've used it at any point in your business journey. You did. Was it beneficial? Any thoughts on that? Or
I think we don't shout out on everybody. Like a mom. For us, the challenge is, you build an instrument, it needs to be deployed in a factory. But the battery world is so diverse. You have different chemistries, different form factor, different structure. There's no way we can build one instrument that's everyone. So we have a small tech stack, the sensor, the electronics in a computer. So we deploy analytics at the edge so that we can learn from that data and optimize our code to tackle the particular problems that are specific to that battery. So we have to rely. And the other thing which I was not very familiar with, when we started recruiting people, one of our programmers is very AI savvy. So he built an integrated development environment after a GitHub unit and implemented Copilot to help coding. And what surprised me is, even though he's a physicist and very knowledgeable in his pace, he went up the learning curve on ultrasound very quickly, which probably it will take probably several years, it's a few months. Because when he's coding, the Copilot that was integrated into our development environment was able to give suggestion. He used to ask, "Hey, it's asking me to do this. Does that make sense?" I was like, "Yeah, that's totally makes sense, right?" If you're an expert, you'll be able to do like that. So what enabled us to do is, even if you get someone new, we were able to make them perform at an average level or above average level quite quickly, which usually takes many years to get to. Of course, from above average to excellent, you still need to become an expert in the field. But to get everyone up the learning curve quickly, it enabled us. So we do that all the time. I hate legal stuff. It's not wired that way. So I use a lot of ChatGPT and all those things. And if a document comes and throw it and say, what do I watch out for in this? Key points. And then I, like a pro, roll up my sleeves and say, I need this line changed, whatever. Right? So yeah. So technology is there for using to overcome deficiencies, and you need to use it.
Use it quite a bit. I think when you run a startup, you've got to do everything by yourself. And I'm not really a techie, but I needed to build a server for basically to host images and deploy operating system images, and also to do sort of mass for devices, because we need to get rid of the data on the thing. So I basically built a guide on how to provision the server, how to install all of the the internal networking, how to re-image the files, how to deploy the files, how to build a load of automation scripts. And I did that in basically a day's work to do. But I use it for helping me with bids, for the content, or even for things like if I'm going to be switching someone up for the basket to, if you were niche and ahead of a sonar company, what would be your key challenges, things like that. And you can list out so you can know, you can sort of start a conversation with someone then to sort of understand, it's not always accurate, but it gives you a bit of help.
Yeah.
Massively helpful bit of technology.
Just to add one more thing, we were also building a chief marketing officer, virtual assistant. So we put all our documents in a private ChatGPT type thing that we built in-house. And if anybody wants to ask any question, they can do so. We had a part-time marketing person once, and he started developing things which are top quality because he can always ask that local ChatGPT to say, okay, I want to write this answer to that particular thing, and it'll just look through all your data, your PowerPoints, your reports, your things, and it'll build the answer quite quickly. So it's very productive.
Yeah. Great for research as well, for market research. You can get lots of information about where to look at stuff.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on AI or not really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I have lots of thoughts on AI.
How long have you got?
Yeah. So I think AI used correctly is great. I think the temptation with AI, it's so accessible, you can just use it to pull information. A lot of the times it's not always right. And I see it a lot in my day job actually. It's like, oh, we don't need marketing, we can just whack it into ChatGPT, and you tend to get the same like no matter what industry, you tend to get the same stuff come out again, and it's quite repetitive, and like I said, it's not always right. So like the example I used to work for a shipping container company, and the team would use AI to like do LinkedIn postings like that. And they would always say, oh, we're really sustainable, we're a great company, but actually shipping containers aren't that sustainable because they're coming from China, and sometimes they're like just have one trip, they're not sustainable. So it was kind of like you are putting out false information. So I think if you want to use AI and I think the best way to use it is to train it. So go in and actually train models yourself, which isn't too hard. You just feed in the information. That's a great way to use it as like starting points for prompts for conversations. I think I personally wouldn't lean on it to write whole bits of content, whole bits of research, things like that. So use it to speed up the process rather than to do the whole thing. Would be my advice.
Good. We've got a question around failure. I mean, we did talk a little bit about this. With the running out of money, gas, but when you've come, I think it's a question perhaps around about have you ever felt like quitting, and what advice do you have about to keep on going?
That's the first thing you need to think about when you start a business. Have an exit strategy, right? Because like I think David mentioned, right? Sometimes you truly believe in it, going from too far. A market's trying to tell you like don't ever happen. Everybody telling you go, but again, you can't predict it. Sometimes you might be the next Elon Musk or whatever. Right? Bad example to tell now, but
so be able to say that.
Yeah, yes, but I can't do that. Right. So, but the point is, even that's one of the best advice I had. I took a phone after a very successful entrepreneur in Derby, and he said, just know when to stop. So when we were developing the hydrogen beta, I know that the market's not going to be ready by 2026, 2030, even optimistically. And I knew that I had to stop that. Even though people were telling, oh, this is going to be so relevant and blah, blah, and all that thing, you need to have an exit strategy. 2 years, you get it to work, which are done. How good it is. You can always restart it later if the market, becomes mature, etc. So have your, it's not like so much about like, you quitting it, but have that planned, but it doesn't feel like you gave up. It was part of your strategy, right? And it's okay to fail fast and move on, right? Because you learn so much from that, short stint of whatever you did.
Thoughts?
Wow. Every week there's a series of sort of minor sort of wins and setbacks, and you kind of try and have to balance those out. I mean, even things like, I think when we put our first lottery bid in, we didn't get it. And I thought, well, that's it then, but we had everything riding on this bid, what were we gonna do? And we just put in another one and we got it, so that big of a deal. But yeah, you do need to know when to stop. And if, you know, if it's not working, you have to be honest with yourself about that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to, so in 2018, when it's 2016, I'd left prison education because I'd kind of then set up doing yoga, and that's when I set up a yoga studio in Digbeth, knowing that Digbeth it was August 2017 that I opened under the arches. It was really cool. I thought Digbeth is going to be the place to be. You know, they're doing all of this infrastructure work there. Well, they're still doing it, aren't they? So I went into business with my sister, because she teaches yoga as well. In fact, we're a family of yoga teachers, and that's another story. So we started it using our own money as well. And, you know, we're really passionate about what we do, but it didn't work. As much as heart and everything that went into it, we started it from scratch. We did everything from marketing all the way through to like budgeting, financing. And I remember the day that I said to my sister, and this was me being the oldest sister as well, saying, right, we're stopping. We have to stop because we're not getting the footfall, but we're paying an extremely big amount of rent every month. We're under a bridge which kept flooding as well. So there's a problem with the landlord, you know, although it's cool. And I remember her saying, let's just give it another month. Let's just give it another month. And I just thought, no, like, we are exhausted. We got so exhausted to the point where, for someone who, you know, I've done yoga most of my life, I was falling out of love with it. That was my sign. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and it takes more guts actually to admit that you're a failure, or not you're a failure, but like, it's a failure. It's okay, you know, than it is to carry on sometimes. And I remember, you know, there's also that little bit of attachment to like, oh gosh, what's everybody going to say? What my friends and family going to say? You know, oh gosh, they've ploughed all this money into this, and now all of a sudden they fail. But the opportunities, honestly, it was almost like the universe sent us all these opportunities. As soon as we closed it, we were just, there was a sense of relief. So, you know, no more 24-hour crying for me, because I used to go home really stressed out thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I had a young family at the same time as well. And from those, you know, from that, we learned so many lessons from that. And I think sometimes, you know, you build your resilience through failure, because you will then look back and think how you could do something maybe better next time, or you'd be more wiser in making a different choice. So I think, you know, failure should never, that word should never have any negative connotations. Although the word itself is negative, you should always look at it as, okay, what has it taught me? What, you know, you either sink or you swim. Yeah.
So parallel, nobody would ever start anything.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Becky, or is?
No, not really. I think probably my thoughts on it. I think sometimes I think like you're saying, quitting sounds terrible, but sometimes it's actually good to know when to quit and when to put your energies into something else. I think on a day-to-day basis, like we all said, there's peaks and troughs of running a business. Some days you think, oh my God, what am I doing? What have I done? But I think as long as you can kind of take a step back and think, okay, what's going on? How do I kind of de-escalate what's going on in my head? I think that's always good. It's, you know, it's a separate part. It's just a business at the end of the day. So as long as you can kind of rationalize your decisions and know you're doing the best thing. And again, if it gets to the point, if you're having these days a lot, know when to quit. I think, yeah, those are the kind of things you have to keep in mind.
Got a few more questions, but I think we're sort of coming to our allotted time. So is there any last burning, is anybody got a question on there that they really want answers? No.
So there's one question I asked which was related to risk management, because in a world of uncertainties, there are so many things we need to be aware of. We need to see the trends and patterns. We need to have that strategic foresight, they say, how to, start building how to align basically your risk with strategy. So how do you manage risk management? Like, what's the strategy used behind risk? How do you identify risk and how you manage them effectively? That's what the question was.
And so we have a risk register. We decide in our sort of our business model that we have a risk register at the start of the year, and we kind of look at, finance, staff, fundraising, and we kind of score it to see, where it is on the chart as far as risk goes, because obviously being in third sector and very heavily relying on fundraising or donations, if that goes under, then obviously all of our staff will lose their jobs, and that's it. So we have a risk register which we review every quarter. So I'm actually responsible for the risk register, and then I take that to all the trustees, who will sit down with me and say, what risks are there, for the charity this quarter or this whole year, and then we split it into quarters. And then we have a scoring system for it, sort of like colours, red, green, amber. And it's just a really good tool, just, gives you a bit of sort of foresight to what could potentially happen. And also, helps us also, we then have a reserve fund as well. So our finance person will look into our reserves in case, like at the minute, we're in the middle of, an example is in the middle of an office move. And we've got a huge repair schedule that we're responsible for before we leave, which is causing an extreme amount of stress. And that's lucky we've got a reserves sort of funding, which we can now dip into. But we knew that would be a risk beforehand because we knew we were going to move. How we sort of, for us, how we manage it.
So I've been a project manager for 20 years, and traditionally in a project, you have a risk workshop and you try and identify all the things that could possibly happen, and you develop this risk register, and you have a governance meeting and you review your risks and you see where you are. And I think this sort of 20 years of doing this has told me that it's just a complete and utter waste of time, because the risks that actually come and cause you the biggest problems are the ones that no one has ever identified and no one has thought of. So the risks that are front of mind that that could happen, everyone knows about them, and there's no point wasting your time talking a lot about them and tracking them or anything else. I think it's kind of the resilience of being ready for shit to just come out of nowhere and hit you, because that's how it happens in real life. And the stuff that gets you is the stuff that you never thought would ever happen and could never have anticipated. That's my personal take anyway.
Just end on that note. Yeah,
I totally agree with David.
Yeah.
We do maintain risk registrants and projects. We can do that and do. But the thing is, at the end, you've got a limited amount of resource, time, etc. Where do you put that to develop the product, or you put processes in place, right? And I also feel that's why probably UK doesn't do very well converting ideas to business, because we're very process focused here, right? You won't have time to develop things, test things. So you have to live dangerously, but everything is risky. Let's start.
Yeah.
Right. So you learn to fix it as you go.
And you've identified the big three anyway.
Yeah. What can go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Presumably, that you talked about when you're younger, at different stages of your life, your risk appetite is different, or the amount of risk you can take on board.
Yeah, when you've got a family, when you've got big financial commitments, when you don't have savings, when you're just too hard to contemplate doing this, and from a financial point of view sometimes. And also, I think probably I was working harder and longer for less money. You have to, I suppose, at certain stages of your career, people kind of expect that. I was a management consultant, and you get well to death really. So there wasn't any time to even think about it at that stage.
Risk management is a strange one for me because in cosmetics there's so many risks you have to account for. So like I was saying about the paperwork, you legally have to do it. So in that sense, I have a lot of processes set up. It's just like a one process. So we do get the product assessed, and then we have to do a product information file, and it gets submitted to a government portal. So that's just one standard process that never gets changed to make sure the risks are covered. So everything's kind of good on that side. But then kind of like everyone else has said, everything else, you just need to test things. You need to kind of challenge what might be a risk and not be afraid to go for things. In retail, we have peaks and troughs of when there's cash flow. So like Christmas, great, we're making loads of money, and then January it's dead. So kind of having that foresight, knowing that's coming, and thinking about what you can do to mitigate that is always good. But I do think you have to, with owning a business, there's always a risk. Things will go wrong. Things will catch you off guard. And I think just having that awareness and not panicking is always good.
Well, thank you so much for coming along tonight and giving your time and sharing your expertise. So if we could give a round of applause.